The 5.5 Spiral Abyss usage rates are out, and they are getting quite a bit of attention, as this abyss is arguably one of the hardest that we have ever had. In addition, certain things about these usage rates really had me asking some questions, and honestly give me a whole new perspective on the actual Spiral Abyss experience for most players. Welcome to Jello Impact, where we build and test every single character to help you decide who you want to wish for and build. If you want to see me struggle or not with this Spiral Abyss, my original clears are now up on Patreon, so you can go check that out down below. And if you don't want to support me that way, you can just subscribe. We're almost at 100,000, so every single one helps a lot. First of all, I do really want to throw a bone and talk to those people who are struggling with Chamber 1, especially this last one, which has something like 60 or 100 enemies or just something insane. And yeah, if you have Venti, then that does make it easier. I didn't clear it with Venti. I cleared it with, you guessed it, Chlorand Moika. Both of them have crazy AoE, so we did it first try easily, no problem. The problem I actually had was these weird electro guys, which once they got their shield up, I couldn't take it down. I actually didn't ever learn what was up with their shield and why I couldn't break it. But the next time I fought it, I killed them too quickly that they didn't get up their shield. So I never had to learn the perks of having damage, I guess. But if we're considering characters that can do big AoE, if you have Moika, I highly recommend Moika. If you have Overload, I can highly recommend either Chlorand or Veressa. Both of them have really big AoE. Neuvillette Kazuha should also be really good for those 100 enemy characters. I do not recommend pulling your hair out with characters like Hu Tao or Arlecchino or Alhaitham or Sino or any of these characters, or Chaska or Navia or Ito. If you, I think characters like Xiao could probably do it. You need characters with big AoE, and that's gonna be Chlorand, Moika, Veressa, and then of course Venti can fix it quite a bit. I understand that it's frustrating to feel like you need to have certain characters to clear the content. I will say that I know this is going to be so unpopular and so hated, is I kind of like it. I just wish it was more frequent, and I'll explain what I mean. I think that there should be chambers that heavily reward big AoE. I think that's good game design because big AoE is a unique thing. The problem is it's single target, single target, single target, single target. You get into your head that, you know, the game is single target or like 2 enemies, and then all of a sudden a huge AoE chamber hits you and you have no idea what to do. There's no preparation. It's just all of a sudden, well, I hope you pulled those characters. So I like it, but I don't like that it's only here and there as like a jump scare. That's, hopefully you guys understand what I mean and you can get behind that. And yeah, Neuvillette, maybe Ayato, especially with Venti. Maybe this is Ganyu Venti time. Maybe this is like Morgana time. Let me know what you use to clear floor 11. I'd love to hear your tips down below. So first of all, just right off the hop, Xilonen is number 1. Makes sense. She just got her rerun. She is very OP, very strong, works with basically everyone. I expect her to be very high in the usage rates for a long time. No, I don't think that Xilonen is overrated, even with that discourse sort of coming up. I do think that there are accounts that can get away without Xilonen and potentially even do so optimally. However, she is still a very recommendable choice and still someone that will generally improve most players' accounts by a lot. So I think that while she's not a must pull and not ubiquitous across every account, she is generally worth getting and worth using, and I would be shocked if I didn't use her in a Spiral Abyss, although I'm sure it'll happen at some point, especially as you get more and more different characters. So no big surprise that she's at the top. Citlali, this Abyss definitely really likes Cryo on the second half. In particular, that Seahorse shield, those Electro shields, plus of course you can play her with Moika Hyper, and Moika is the next most used character in terms of usage percentage. She's just so ridiculously good on both halves of the Abyss, honestly, especially the first half. I really love running her on Chevreuse teams. Obviously Chlorand, but Veressa or anyone else you want to use on a Chevreuse team. Moika plus Chevreuse on the first half is crazy because you get the Chevreuse buff while being able to vape Moika. It just trivialize the first half. It's so good. Bennett, obviously, every attack scaling DPS. I love that the first 4 characters are the Moika Hyper team. Not that that's all that they're being used for, but it just goes to show this team is finally getting its flowers. It is the best team in the game. Farina's next. She's quite bad on the first side, and the second side, she doesn't do that much against the first chamber. She's quite good against the second chamber, and she's honestly not that great against the third chamber when you look at just raw what she does, being hydro damage and buffing, because there's a lot of hydro resist and elemental checks that are not favorable to hydro. But just like the next character on this list, Neuvillette, resistance to hydro or resistance to any element doesn't really mean as much anymore when a team like Novelet Hyper is playing both Kazuha and Shilonen on a team. So if you've got double resistance shred, well, an enemy that might have heavily resisted Hydro, it doesn't matter so much that they did, to the point where in this first chamber, the Pearl Seahorse, even though the Novelet Hyper team, the most popular team in the Abyss actually, which did shock me and I had to look into it. Okay, second most popular. First most popular is Moika Hyper, mostly used on the first side, makes perfect sense. And then second is Novelet's regular Hyper team, which is just unintuitive to me. I wouldn't expect that to a team that relies on solely Hydro damage to go up against an enemy with that historically you've mostly broken the shield to beat, the Seahorse, and then these Hydro resistant Crocodile. You wouldn't expect a pure Hydro damage team to be the second most used, but I played it and it cleared absolutely incredible. Next is Hyper Bloom, then Novelet with Baiju. This one is even more surprising, although I guess Baiju can help to break the shield, the Seahorse shield, but I don't think it would work very well. I guess this one I have to imagine that they're using Farina and or Novelet Constellation. We'll get back to it. Kazuha's next, makes perfect sense. He's pretty solid at breaking the shields and great at reducing resistance and just a good buffer overall. Arlecchino, I really liked Arlecchino on the first side, like, you know, Moika is obviously the best with that AoE pyro. But if you line things up with Arlecchino, she does great on the first side too. Zhongli, the Tulpa, really likes to kill you. So Zhongli, very nice to have. Wriothesley, Cryo can break that Pearl Seahorse shield, and Cryo is good for the other shield and is not met with resistances. Plus, our blessing is elemental skill Cryo damage. So that's not good for Wriothesley, but still, Wriothesley good. Xiangling, I love Xiangling on the first side. If you don't have Moika or Arlecchino, Xiangling is an awesome character. My Overload Clorand and my Overload Veressa, when I used Xiangling, did excellently well on the first side. If you happen to have either of those Overload teams, like, yeah, Moika was better, but Xiangling was awesome. Navia gets a big buff on the first side due to the elemental skill, Geo elemental skill damage bonus. She can also partner with Moika or Xiangling to make that first side really nice for you. Hyper Bloom stuff is next. You kind of get free Hyper Blooms just from the Tulpa, so it works, it makes sense. Chaska, pretty solid on both sides, honestly. Emily, good on the second side. Shiori, big buff on the first side, elemental skill, Geo damage, she's buff. Yansan, excellent buffer, makes sense, people are using him. Great with Overload, which is great on the first half. Kanich, great on the second side. Baiju, comfy pick, has Dendro. Yelan, good off-fielder. Chevreuse, this should be higher. Chevreuse is insane on the first side. Cookie for Hyper Bloom. Cryo is pretty solid on the second side, so these people are using Cryo to break that shield. It's a little bit tricky. I tried, it wasn't free. It wasn't easy. I had an easier time using Novelet. That's why Novelet's the GOAT. And then the usual suspects, the usual DPS for Raiden. I like Hu Tao on the first side. Clorand coming in absolutely criminally underrated, but yeah, Veressa's better. I won't yap on about it. Auroran, nice to use for that second chamber, compatible with Chevreuse teams, and then allows you to climb the secret source automaton pillars, which is very handy. Hopefully that gives you some insights as to how some of these characters are being used. So if you're having trouble clearing this abyss, that gives you some insights. And I will say it is a really hard abyss. I haven't looked yet at the calcs for how much HP everything has, but the fact that you need really high DPS and like some elemental check, and you can kind of get away without it, I guess, with Novelet, but generally it's kind of elemental check and just really high HP, really high DPS. If you're using an old account or an uninvested or underinvested account, I can absolutely see this abyss being difficult to clear. It is challenging, and there's also mechanical stuff that makes it easier or harder to do. It wasn't a problem for me to clear with my level of investment. I have 5-star weapons, no constellations on the 5 stars that I use, but they are very, very well invested. I have excellent builds for my characters, and we cleared with lots of time to spare. So I do think it is still achievable for free-to-plays, but if you're using, you know, like bad old DPSs and they don't have their premium stuff, then I could see it being a problem, which in the past you were generally able to get away with kind of whatever. And if you're using 4-star stuff, then they're probably going to need constellations. I don't see like a C0 4-star weapon account being able to 36-star the Abyss. I don't see that happening. So yeah, Hazo is the least used, along with all these other characters. So interesting stuff for the usage rate. So I thought this is what I really wanted to look at as well, on top of the teams and usage rate, is what constellation characters are on average at. Novelet, the average Novelet who submitted to this, you can submit to this too, by the way, you can download the app and submit yourself, but the average Novelet enjoyer who submitted clears on this app had Constellation 1 on average. That means if people had C0 an equal or greater amount of people had higher than C1. I clicked on him specifically. 45% of players had Constellation 1. Only 38% had C0. Less players had C0 than had C1 or higher. That means when you're looking at this, more than half of these, only 38% of these are C0 Novelette. And mine is a Series 0 Novelette. And 50% of them were using his signature weapon. So this is a very, very, very well invested character, much higher than most of the others. Even Raiden, who is known for having a cracked C2, is on average only C1. Farina average Constellation 1.1. That means not only do 97% of players have Farina, but most of those players, more than half, have Constellation 1 or higher. So when we're considering Farina being top of the meta, Novelette being top of the meta, if we're using usage rates as one of our metrics, we have to consider the fact that more than half of these players have Constellation 1 or higher, which are drastic power boosts for these characters. So when the general person is talking about, oh yeah, Novelette's so strong, Farina's so strong, just remember a lot of them are talking about Constellation 1 Novelette with Constellation 1 Farina with his weapon. That's a pretty solid investment. And hey, that's a worthy investment if you really love Novelette, but just don't expect it to be as necessarily amazing as some people say if you just get C0 Novelette, C0 Farina, and then use a free-to-play prototype Amber. Still good, but it's not as insane. And most of these other characters don't have anywhere near that constellation level. Even, someone like Arlecchino, someone like Moika, who have good early constellation, they're nowhere near the constellation level that Novelette and Farina are. Okay, that's Novelette. Farina, 53% of people have C0, and then a bunch of them have higher constellations. Okay, interesting. It's weighted in a weird way, right? 38%, but the average constellation is 1.13. I guess the higher constellations count more. So although most people don't have C0 Novelette, like 38% have C0 Novelette, over half have C0 Farina, but the people who do get Farina cons often get more cons, and therefore it's weighted higher. Interesting. But still, only half of players, just over half, have only C0. 62% of Raiden owners have C0. 71% have Moika at C0. 61% have Arlecchino at C0. So yeah, very, very interesting stuff. If you want to pause the video and take a look at the other ones, you can do that here. This is our change from the last Abyss. Xiangling with the greatest improvement, which is why I had her on the thumbnail. 21% is a huge increase, especially for a 4-star character that everyone has. Moika, big bump. Bennett, Navia, Arlecchino. I mean, it all makes sense. You can tell exactly why. And then down, Novelette, despite his still huge usage, went down a lot. Baiju went down a lot. Kazuo went down a lot. And the Hydro characters, it all makes sense. Most used teams, so we already talked about Moika Hyper, Novelette Hyper, Alhaitham Hyper Bloom. Wow, Hyper Bloom. Novelette with Baiju, still crazy. Freeze with Ayaka. These are dedicated mains. This is not an easy team to use here. It's effective, but it's not easy. Varessa with Moika, love this. You can do the same with Cloran. I can't. Another Varessa. Novelette with Citlali, you can break the shield if not, but I still wouldn't bother. I wouldn't even, if you're playing this, I wouldn't even bother breaking the Seahorse's shield. Don't even bother trying. With Charlotte, they probably are trying to break the shield, but honestly, he just has so much resistance shred that even though it has high resistances with the shield, you can just brute force it. More teams, people are using lots of cryo. Pause it if you want to see them. I liked Burning. I thought Burning broke the Seahorse's shield nicely and was generally quite effective on the second side. I really, really liked Kenichi Burning. More teams. Also wanted to take a look at the ownership rate. This might be the last usage rates statistics we look at for a while, since it's kind of getting monotonous, boring, the samey, so I wanted to cover the bases. You can see the ownership rate of all the characters. Kazuha 93%. I think we looked at this last time, so you can pause it if you want to see it. And then I also wanted to look at just raw usage. So this is just the total amount of players that are playing each character. So Shalona had the most raw usage. This is not ownership rate, which is per owner. This is just total number of players used. So 78,000 players used Shalonen, 78,000 used Farina, 58,000 used Kazuha, Moika, Citlali, Novelette, Zhongli. It's really not all that different from the ownership rate. Couple changes here and there, but not like a massive thing. Although it is quite crazy to go from 78,000 on this page to 7,900 on this page for Varessa. Only 2,900 used Clorand. I didn't submit it. I haven't bothered yet. And then only 75 players used Mizuki. So just so you know, I am working on testing every meta team against the entire Abyss. In the past, I was doing one sheet for one chamber, but now I'm doing runs for all the meta teams for either the first half, second half, or both. So I'll get together my times, the amount of resets. I've already done a bunch of runs, which I've been able to comment on here, but I'm going to be doing a bunch more, and hopefully it'll just add to your perspective on how well things are clearing, and especially how easy things clear on a first attempt from someone who is a sort of mid-high level of skill like me. Once again, check out the Patreon down below for exclusive content. Subscribe if you would like. But if you don't want to do any of those things, that is totally fine. Just watching the video has been more than enough. Thanks so much. Bye for now.